I wanted to pick up with you on what was said at the end there about it's time for health to get political about, these sorts of issues. I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, of course, in the end, governments have a big influence. They make big decisions, and those decisions in the end do affect how people's lives are. And so, of course, you can't separate out those discussions that we all care about how our kids are going to be, whether they're going to grow up and be happy, from politics. And in the end, politics, the shape of society, the things that we've got available to us, our shared effort is determined by power dynamics in society. And, of course, that then means that there's a real risk that if we don't all do our bit to lift up our voices and to work stronger together, people with a lot of resources, those that have got a lot of wealth, can be the ones whose voices are the loudest. And I don't think anybody wins out of that.
So there's been a lot of talk today. I mean, this whole conference has been about health's sort of role in reversing inequalities. I mean, what sort of a role do you think that the health system has, and how effective is it at the moment?
Well, I think the reason people want to talk about health is because it starts from the day you're born, that experience of when a baby is born and how that happens and whether that baby's going to be okay. That's about the health system. And then, the first time you lose somebody or somebody gets really sick and all of a sudden you're all level, no matter, your individual circumstances, there's something really deeply human about this. And so it does matter to us. And how we go about the treatment of people, whether or not because you're in a low income, you're going to get a really, second-class service, you're going to have to wait for a really, really long time. There's something really, the dignity of the person, how they feel they are valued, to see that if they've got a lot more money, they're going to get in really quick and they're going to get the best specialist. And so there's something really powerful about, is everybody of equal value or not? And so I think that's why, in a sense, the health debate binds us together. We can either use it to divide us up, or we can come together to say we all really care about this, and regardless of who we are, we want to make sure every child and every person has a great health service, and we've got to work hard to make that happen.
And you said some really interesting things in the panel debate about changing the language, or I guess combining facts and emotions. Could you sort of expand on that for people who weren't in the session? Yeah.
Well, look, of course, evidence matters. I mean, at ACOSS, if you care about a great health system, you want to see the evidence about how is it working at the moment. If we changed a part of it, what would be the actual outcome? So evidence is really important. But I think we've come to realise that just having the good evidence doesn't win the debate. Many frustrated people who produce excellent evidence and it doesn't get listened to. And that's because in the end, we are all human. I come back to that theme, including politicians. People have existing belief systems. If your evidence doesn't stack up with how they believe it is, then they're probably going to reject it. So it's those moments, the emotional side, when somebody tells a compelling story or we connect human to human, that the person might pause and go, actually, it's not how I thought it was. And so through that kind of connection, it opens people's minds to be prepared to look differently and then go to look at the evidence. And I think we've got to work on both. We can't just be technicians here. We have to understand that in the end, decisions are made by human beings. And so we have to connect not only with politicians, but across different parts of the community. It's very easy for us to be divided up, to feel like we can't trust each other, and we've got to break that down, and that will happen at a community level, and I hope it also will happen at the political level. I'm happy to be one of the optimists. We've seen a pretty divisive election debate. That will be over on Saturday, and then it will be up to all of us to again work with the government of the day to persuade them, heart and mind, about the right thing to do.
So I was going to ask you finally, Australians going to the polls on Saturday, what are your words of advice for people who are heading out to vote?
Well, look, I think ask some really good questions. What will you do to help people who have the least? What will your government do to make this a better place, not only on the economics, which really matter a lot, but also on that human level. Will we have a more decent debate in Australia? Are we going to pick off and vilify certain parts of society, or are you going to be a decent human being in this job? And I think asking that question is probably a pretty powerful one, because I'm sure 99% of people, when they first thought about going into politics, that's what they really wanted to do, and remind them that if they end up with the power, that it's a big responsibility and they need to use it very carefully.
Very well said.